Hello, my friends, and welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. My friends, for this episode here, what we're going to talk about is who's to blame. And you know what? I don't really like making this episode, but the point of the matter is that fans out there, they are looking for someone to blame. And the reason why they're looking for someone to blame is because when you think about it, this team, you look at it, and for fans, they can't, for some fans, they just can't understand or they can't accept the fact that we lost that game to the Bucs. Because there were a lot of people that thought we should win against the Bucs. That not only we should win, but we should win pretty easily, pretty handedly. And so for them, the fact that we lost in the fashion that we did, somebody is looking for someone to blame as to why the team was, first and foremost, not able to win. But as my title also points out, why we could not seem to score. Why we couldn't seem to put points up on the board. Because let's understand something. This is an offense that we have that literally for the last 2 years has been a top 5, top 3 offense. It has been up there in terms of being able to score, put up yards. So the fact that we had a game that we had, against the Bucs, and then also against the Rams, where the offense just is not on the same page, it's kind of sputtering, it's stalling a bit. People are now like, okay, who's to blame for why this is happening? And who's to blame also for not only why that's happening, but also in tandem for why we lost the game against the Bucs? Because honestly, for a lot of Lions fans, the two kind of go hand in hand. So I started thinking to myself, I was like, you know what here? Who are Lions fans trying to blame? Who are they singling out? Who are they deciding, deserves blame? Typically, when I've been looking at social media, whether it's Twitter, whether it's Facebook, whatever the case might be, I usually find these 4 names. And I've already talked about them before, so I'm not gonna, draw it out and make you all wonder. I'm talking about Jared Goff, I'm talking about Ben Johnson, I'm talking about Dan Campbell, and I'm talking about Brad Holmes. Now, I'm going to tell you this right now. When it comes to trying to decide who gets all the blame or who's most at fault here, that is where we have to take a look at each one individualistically. So let's think about this. Let's go to Goff first, because he's always the one that gets the blame to begin with. Like I said, quarterbacks get the most excessive praise. They also get the most excessive blame. That's just the nature of the position. So, okay here. What did Goff do in that game that deserves blame? Well, Goff definitely was having issues getting his throws to his wide receivers. Again, I've said this in a past episode, but Goff was constantly short throwing his wide receivers. There was at least, I would say, about half a dozen throws, it seemed like, where the ball was constantly going to the feet of the wide receiver. I couldn't figure out if it was just because, maybe Goff was off with his timing a little bit. Maybe he lost his grip. I couldn't figure out why for a couple of throws, Goff, it seemed like his ability to get the throw to the wide receiver just simply wasn't there, because there were plenty of other throws where Goff was throwing it further down the field and it was right on the money. The throw to J-Mo, the throw to Khalif Raymond on the sideline. I was like, okay, here, something's a little bit weird, but that's something that people would point out to blame. Then you got the fact that, people want to also look at, the fact of the interceptions. Again, I want to say this. That first interception was not Goff's fault. That was a PI call that the refs didn't call. That should never have happened. The second one, that one was definitely Goff's fault because he threw it into the middle of the field. I understand why he was throwing it into the middle of the field, because that's where his man was supposed to be. But when you're getting hit, your best bet is to do one of 2 things, especially when you're in the situation that you are when you're down by 4. Either 1, throw it to the sideline, or 2, hey, just take the sack. It's much better to take the sack and get 3 points rather than the ball get intercepted and you get nothing. So there's that. But, okay, if the main thing we want to talk about with Goff as far as blame is concerned is short hopping some throws and that one interception in the fourth quarter, which, by the way, that interception in the fourth quarter did not hurt the team. It didn't, because nobody scored any points in the fourth quarter. So that interception didn't have any benefit to the freaking Bucs. So, okay, yeah, it was a bad interception, but that's about the extent of it. It just looks bad on Goff. It didn't actually harm the team in terms of being able to win the game or in terms of us losing the game. So, okay, let's take a look at what actually, entailed for that to happen for Goff. Like I've said, bad offensive line protection because Goff was under constant duress throughout most of that game. Didn't really have a clean pocket a whole lot of times, and honestly, that was probably one of the worst performances that I've seen from our offensive line in quite a while. Then I've also noted how the wide receivers were not getting a whole lot of separation. Again, Goff is one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the NFL, but I'm telling you this right now. When your wide receivers can't get separation, it makes it excessively difficult for a quarterback to get the throw to the wide receiver. Even if the quarterback puts it right on the money, exactly where it needs to be, if the wide receiver can't get separation, it doesn't matter how damn accurate the throw is, because that cornerback should be in good position to stick his hand up and knock the ball down. So it's up to the wide receiver to make sure, hey, I'm running the right route, I'm running a good route, I'm getting separation, so that way I can present myself as a target to my quarterback without having to worry about him possibly, not wanting to throw the ball to me because I'm under constant coverage. And then finally, there's the play calling issue. Again, this leads me into the next conversation point, but Ben Johnson's play calling was just absolutely atrocious. He didn't use personnel well. He didn't do a very good job of mixing up his play calling schemes. And I'm sorry to say it, but it just seemed like he didn't know what he was doing in terms of going from one play to the next, setting up certain things. Because when you're calling plays, you're kind of playing a chess move. You're trying to set up plays like 2, 3, 4 down the road. And it didn't seem like that's what he was doing. It seemed like what he was doing was trying to take it one play at a time for the next play that was in front of it. And it's like, dude, you got to set stuff up so that way you can make a move 3, 4, plays down the road. And that leads us into Ben Johnson because Ben Johnson is the guy that starts everything with the offense. Yes, I know Goff gets the play. I know Goff, runs the play. I get that. But the guy that ultimately starts everything on offense is Ben Johnson. He's the one that calls the play. He's the one that's, is mic'd into freaking Goff's ear. Everything starts with him. So play selection, personnel, everything starts with him. So if we really want to talk about who's got a big hand in this as far as the offense not scoring and the team not winning, we got to take a very hard look at Ben Johnson. I've said this before, I'll say it again. As much as I love Ben Johnson, if we're being fair here, that was probably the worst game that he has called as the Lions offensive coordinator ever. That was not a good game plan. It was not a good day for him as far as calling plays. And it was very evident because the Bucs always seemed to have his number. He could never find a way to get in front of Todd Bowles' defense, whereas in the past, he was able to. So again, that was a big thing as far as, Ben Johnson is concerned. Then we get to Dan Campbell. Again, with Campbell, the issue has been and primarily will be for this situation, the field goal snafu. Because Campbell himself admitted that he screwed that up. So first and foremost, I'm happy about the fact he took accountability. But if we realistically want to look at this, if that field goal gets kicked, we easily win the game. Because, okay, I've said it, instead of being down by 4, we'd only be down by 1. Jake Bates has been consistent all year. He's only missed literally one freaking, extra point, and that was in preseason, folks. So for me, it'd be like, okay, we get that field goal, we get close enough to kick another one, we should win the game. But because we weren't able to get that first field goal before we went into the halftime period, that right there is a huge reason why we didn't win. So for me, okay, that also has a big bearing on this. That is something that we have to take serious account of when we're trying to talk about who's to blame here. And then the final one, again, haven't seen this one as much, but it is floating out there. You just have to search hard enough. But there's also people that are blaming Brad Holmes. And why? Again, because of the lack of wide receiver production. Again, wide receiver right now is pretty much divided between two guys. Jameson Williams and, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jameson Williams has been stellar to start the year. Absolutely stellar. He's had 2 really great games back-to-back. Amon-Ra St. Brown, not a really good game against the Rams, but then absolutely came back to life against the Bucs. But the problem is, past that, we really haven't had much out of the wide receiver position. I mean, if we realistically think about it, I think, Tim Patrick has 1 catch, and Khalif Raymond has a catch. But otherwise, I can't really name any other wide receivers that have caught passes from Jared Goff. That's a massive problem because Josh Reynolds last year was a huge component of this offense that was very reliable. So having that extra wide receiver, having that extra weapon was first and foremost able to spread out the defense further, but it was also a safety, a security blanket for Jared Goff where it's like, okay, if the play is breaking down and my normal 1-2 guy is not open, I know I can throw it to Josh because he's going to be in the right space and I can rely on him to make the catch. Realistically right now, that's not there. And there's a lot, pardon me, not a lot. There are some Lions fans that are looking at Brad Holmes and they're saying, why did you first and foremost not do a better job getting Josh Reynolds back? Or why did you not do a better job of replacing him in the offseason? And now we're going through this musical chair situation of trying to figure out who's going to replace Josh Reynolds. Tim Patrick was the first one that got a shot. But we still have freaking Donovan Peoples-Jones on practice squad. And we also still have, what's his name? He used to play for the Bears, Allen Robinson. I was trying to figure it out in my head. But the point is, we still don't really know who's going to be the number 3 guy. So that right there is also a problem because now we're slightly limited on offense compared to what we're normally used to having. So, okay, I've taken a look at how every single one of these guys has blame in this game. But which one is most to blame? I'm going to tell you this right now. This answer is probably not going to be the one you guys were expecting. There is nobody who's most to blame for this game. They all equally share blame. Because if you're going to blame one, you have to blame the rest, and you have to blame them all in equal measure because they all have a hand into why this happened. You can't just say, oh, well, if this one individual had done a better job, then they would have gotten us over the hump. Really? How do you know that for a fact? Jared Goff could have played an excellent game, but you know what? Because of Dan Campbell's, gaff there at the end of the second half, maybe we still don't win the game. That right there could have been the case. Or you know what? Maybe, Dan Campbell doesn't have that gaff, but then Ben Johnson and Jared Goff still have a problem. That's everything playing all together here, folks. And then let's include Brad Holmes in this. Let's just say, Brad Holmes was able to get Josh Reynolds back or able to find a suitable replacement for him in the free agency period. But then again, all those other things that we've been talking about, they occur. That's what I'm trying to say. There's too many hypotheticals in this situation. There's too many what ifs. There's too many things that you'd have to try and take into account to figure out, okay, well, who's truly the most to blame here? You can't do it. When you're talking about blame, you have to be fair and you have to say, okay, everybody is equal to blame in terms of why this happened because everyone had a hand into why it happened. You can't just say, you're the main guy. You're the one that's going to be the scapegoat. Because I'm going to tell you this right now, very, very seldomly, unless it is plainly obvious, is anybody or any one guy the real reason why a team loses or why something happens. There's usually multiple factors that play into all that. That's the truth. But anyway, folks, I just wanted to talk about this because, again, I understand Lions fans are upset. I understand that there are some that are looking for a scapegoat. They're looking for the guy, to blame. But for me, there comes a point where it's like, okay, you have to calm down. You have to be rational here. You cannot just literally go for the easiest hanging fruit and say, yep, that's what we're going with. Because first and foremost, that's lazy. But also, the easiest option is typically the wrong one. That's just the truth. But anyway, folks, I'm going to end this episode, and I want to say thank you all for watching another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these 3 things: like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, I want to highly encourage y'all, please make sure you turn on that bell notification icon so that way you guys never miss any more content that I push out. Also want to encourage y'all to share the content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can with everybody and anybody that you can. The more we can share it, the greater the channel can grow and spread. And with that being said, whether you guys have been a long-time viewer or whether you guys first started viewing me today, I hope y'all enjoyed the content. I hope y'all have something in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.